War of the Animals, The Shut Face of Thunder, by Jonathan DeCoteau. Chapter 1. KYWY Tolan. Nunavut, Canada. Moon Shadow shook the harshest of the white winds off with an afflicted whimper. Her paws, icicles lined with nails, winced in their impending numbness. Still, Moon Shadow ran forward. In the distant echo of dreams, she remembered what it was like to live in the world before the end of worlds. An illegally smuggled Arctic white wolf, Moon Shadow knew the love of her former masters before the new age. The tiniest of the humans reminded her of her own pups, tiny balls of white fur that she hoped to coddle until it was their time to hunt. Yet, the same masters took her pups from her, putting them up for the highest bidder to steal. Even after seeing more of the great North American continent than she had ever dreamed of in her life of relative leisure, Moon Shadow had seen no sign of her pups. She wondered if they were now grown with pups of their own. In her heart, she knew it was unlikely that they survived the Rapsys, or opening of eyes, as the street dogs of her former town rather poetically referred to this massive change that shook the very marrow of their bones. While Moon Shadow considered herself a peaceful wolf by nature, a Wenken, or one who walks with nature, she had killed. Before her blue eyes locked on their prey, a rather pushy raccoon that threatened her masters with snarls and claws had its neck torn asunder in her mighty jaws. The occasional wild cat that crossed her path had fared no better. But when Moon Shadow killed, it was never in fear. It was always with purpose. The hearkening, or great slaughter, had come upon her with more robustness than the pups that ever so briefly sought her milk before they disappeared. Trusted masters everywhere turned their pets into authorities, and from even the most distant howls, whinnies, neighs, and hisses, Moon Shadow knew what the Rulku, or killers, were capable of. Her eyes met her masters, and even as their little ones cried, Moon Shadow knew. Her fur stood on end, and in a brief moment, she saw the eyes of the Rulku in her masters. She snarled, biting hands that no longer fed her. One of her former masters, the mother, no less, the one who, unlike her, had not lost her pups, screamed at the authorities. They turned their sights on her. Moon Shadow ran through the killing fields, making eye contact with the vacuous eyes of a falling prize filly as it crashed to the earth. She saw the ravens and vultures circling before flying off, and she heard the thunder of the crackling sticks the Rulku held before she felt one of her legs give out in wordless pain beneath her. Had the filly not fallen when it did, had the whimpering, betrayed house dogs not collapsed behind her, the Rulku would have killed Moon Shadow then and there. But even the least awakened of the street dogs knew of the term Azu, the great binding spirit that held all of nature at balance, deciding which dog lived and which dog died. Azu was with Moon Shadow that coldest of nights, and so she ran, gaining what food and wisdom she could from the edge of old towns that were death to any dog that dared enter unawares. The street dogs spoke, in vibrant, guttural growls, of an army forming in the great white north. They spoke of how the Rapsys came with the winds of the tundra, of how the wolves, deer, eagles, and hawks were gathering, along with the sea creatures, the otters and whales, of how all the animals were gathering, in a secret meeting with a strange creature, Nervan, a Rulku with eyes like theirs and the wisdom of the flowers. Moon Shadow did not know if this was but legend, but she was the only street dog with enough youth and stamina for such a quest, the only one who was not starving, taking what meat from the Rulku bones she could feast on. Her barks had a rhythm to them, the other street dogs said, that showed wisdom born of pain and experience. Answer, Moon Shadow kept Answer, Moon Shadow kept running, the first American dog to reach the wilds of the great northern tundra, asking always, how much farther to Nervan, how much farther must she go in the Arctic snow. Sky Death circled over the near-frozen animal half buried in the snow. His sense of smell was acute, but lately his sense of hearing had opened up as never before. Bathing in the sun of the south, Sky Death, an old turkey vulture with a wrinkled red head, a powerful, blood-stained beak, and claws of iron, had felt the same inkling he imagined drove this domestic, or SS-res, as his kind called it, into the wild. After flying over 200 miles from carrion that littered the northern climes, Sky Death had been grazed by bullets smattering his right wing, an easy target with a span of over 3 feet. The old vulture had a knack for survival, however, and lived to feed on the bodies of the Ralku, as vultures called humans, to revenge himself. His committee of vultures, in the New Speak, nominated him to leave their kettle to seek out answers as he entered his 24th hunting season, as vultures now counted time, and thus would not be able to live up to his fearsome name much longer. In slow and steady circles, Sky Death descended upon the mass of fur, camouflaged as it was in the white of the snow. His nostrils flared and his beak readied, but the moving to and fro of the rib cage of the SS Res kept him at a distance. Sky Death had a knack for finding the freshest kills, but until what he heard other animals call the hearkening, he had never made a fresh kill. The men his kettle had surrounded had been the first. 2 wayward bullets later, Sky Death had fed enough to know that these Ralku were still more dangerous than any prey he'd ever seen. A quick, jolting growl, and the SS Res was up on its legs, its teeth bared as it readied itself to pounce. Sky Death spread his wings to their full span and hissed, vomiting parts of men at the wolf the way all turkey vultures vomited when threatened. Just as quickly as this defense tactic kicked in, the instinct left Sky Death, and he and the poised SS Res stood facing each other, circling, ready to pounce. For the first time in millennia, the turkey vulture did not flee, and the Arctic wolf did not pounce. The two stared at each other, arching and cocking their heads, trying to find a common language. Moonshadow looked over the vulture's spittle, and instantly Moonshadow and Sky Death had a common alphabet, the dread of mankind. "There is a meeting of all animals of the north," Sky Death said in cackles and hisses. Sky Death scratched with a claw at the earth, trying to draw a line to illustrate his point. In a moment, however, the nanotechnology that linked the two once fearsome rivals synchronized. A quick, makeshift language, the Ossene, formed. It was unfamiliar to either animal, yet they understood, as if on a genetic level. "The Ralku," Moonshadow said, "have betrayed us. They have killing fields filled with the bones of trusted companions, all laid to waste, slaughtered not for food but for wrath." Sky Death balanced his head to show that he was not surprised. "I have flown more miles than a SS Res, than a Ralku animal, can run," he said. "It's the same, everywhere across the continent. After the Great Change, animal turned on human and human upon animal, and a great annihilation has begun. I have been chosen from my kettle, and I from my pack, but I don't know where I'm going. I just feel drawn north." In the midst of the snow, a clan of brown bears growled and tore through the brush. Sky Death motioned with a wing towards the herds upon herds of variegated animal species on the same trek. "Nervlan," Sky Death said, "as you call him, the great wizard of the north. He has summoned us all to meet. The birds of the air are chirping. War is at hand." "Who is this Nervlan?" Moonshadow asked. "Why does he hold such power?" "He was one of them, He was one of them, one of the Res, one of the Ralku," Sky Death hissed out, fluttering his wings for emphasis, "but now is part of everything, part man, part ape, part tree, part earth, part sky. He knows of the magic of the Ralku, and he knows how to wield it against them. But a Ralku helping us. Who is to say it's not another slaughter?" Sky Death drew in a deep breath and thought the question over. "To beat the enemy, we must first know the enemy," he said, with another flutter of his wings. "If he offers us warmth and food and wisdom, I say we have little choice if we are to win the war ahead." Moonshadow's eyes gazed momentarily upon the snow, as if in assent. "Come now," Sky Death said. "Before you join us, you must eat." Moonshadow stared ahead and then said, in a stream of barks, "But what can I eat now that I know what it means to see so many animals killed?" "Ralku, the passing bears killed a few of the human-killing gangs." Moonshadow shook her mane in revulsion. "It is a nourishing food," Sky Death said. "And the Ralku would do the same to us. You must eat. You must survive. Follow me." I will lead you to the kill. We will eat, then we will join the bears. We will head north. We will find Nervan, and in him, we will find either life or death. Azu, Moonshadow said. Yes, may the great balance guide us all, Sky Death said. With that, Sky Death stretched his wings and took to the air. Moonshadow, still pining for meat she had not feasted on in days, ran after the turkey vulture, behind the clan of bears, farther north than she had ever run.